everyone who was able to join. We threw this together, pretty quickly here. And we know people didn't have a ton of time, ton of notice, but this is what happens when you get news like this. You have to kick into action. So thanks so much for, to everyone for being able to jump on the call today and join us in this really important work. So today we have an hour. We're going to do some quick intros. We'll talk about the proposed cuts, what those programs are, and then we want to spend some time, like I said, discussion, and then also talking about just the state budget process a little bit, and then how everyone can get involved, how we can work together to get things where they need to be, restore these programs in the governor's proposed budget. So before I go to this slide, I'm going to launch a poll because, like I said, I'm joined by Amy, I'm joined by Andy, I'm joined by Amanda. And I'll say Amanda is here. I know when we initially reached out to everyone, we were really talking about 2 programs. You'll see there is a 3rd program we want to bring to your attention related to foster youth that is also proposed for elimination. And Amanda's here today to talk about that program. But first, before we move on, I do want to launch a poll. If I can get that to work here and see, because we don't have the time, obviously, to go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves. We want to ask first just where you're located so we can get an idea of what regions we have here today represented. So if you can just quickly vote, I'm not going to leave it open for a super long time because we want to get through our discussion today, but let's give it about 10 more seconds and then we'll sort of see who's on the call. All right, I'm going to close it. And it looks like we have can people see that? Great. Looks like we have a Northern California presence in Bay Area, LA, and then kind of Southern California, not LA. Small group from the Central Valley. Thank you. Doesn't look like we have Central Coast people, but that's okay. We got our Central Valley people. We have one more poll to share with you, and that is just kind of what organization you work for. Are you a direct service provider, or are you a young adult yourself, maybe not affiliated with an organization? Are you an attorney? Do you work for a state department? So just kind of share what your affiliation is, sort of organizationally or personally, and we'll give it about 10 more seconds. And we tried to be pretty exhaustive with all these categories, but if we missed, an entity, my apologies. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And so we have service providers, looks like advocates and legal services organizations, county social services and county agencies are also in the house. We've got a sprinkling of other folks from other entities. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I'm glad we have a broad group here of represent different kind of parts of our sector. So next, I just want to thank everyone, because I think if you're here, you probably joined the coalition letter for this Saving the SILP Housing Supplement and the Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program. And if you haven't signed on yet, there's still time. We did send this letter to the governor, but there will be other renditions sent. So thank you. At 70 organizations in less than a week joined on. So what that really shows us is we all care about these programs and we're all committed to saving them and maintaining them for young people. So I want to thank everyone for taking swift action. It was a funky time of the year, New Year's, people were out, like it was not ideal time. So thank you for doing that. So what we're going to talk about today, the $13.7 million Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program, which serves approximately 1,300 young people. The $18.8 million Supervised Independent Living Placement SILP Housing Supplement, which will serve over 3,000 people, young people, starting in 2025. And then, like I said, we've also added another program that we're going to talk about today that is also proposed, unfortunately, for elimination, and that is the Family Urgent Response System, which is a $30 million program, which is a hotline and local mobile crisis or mobile response teams in response to nearly 5,000 calls a year. So these are all incredibly important programs. They're all proposed for elimination in the governor's budget, which is a proposal. It is not moving forward yet. This is something the governor says, this is what I've suggested, and then we respond to it. So we are responding. So I'm going to briefly go over the first program we're going to talk about today. And yes, we will share these slides. We will follow up with everyone who registered with these slides. The Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program. This is a program that a lot of people don't know this, but it leverages federal housing support. If you're familiar with this program, maybe you serve young people with it. This is really providing services and housing navigation to young people. Many of them have federal housing choice vouchers through FYI or FUP. And if you don't know a lot about these programs, there's still an opportunity to learn. We're not going to go into depth today to focus really more on advocacy process, but we have a lot of materials we can share with you later if you want to learn more. One thing that's really important about this funding is that youth with these vouchers, the county is required to provide or secure supportive services for them. And this is the only state funding designated for that purpose. So this Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program funding, HNMP, enables counties to fulfill their side of the federal mandate. The Housing Authority does the other side. They have the voucher, which provides the rental subsidy. And so they do this in partnership with the housing authorities. They are required to do this. If they don't have funding to do this, based on history, we will see that there will be less housing choice vouchers for young people, and we will see many of them lose services, which is sort of what I'm getting to here on the next slide. You know, losing state Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program funding would mean losing up to $22 million annually in federal housing support for former foster youth. Now, we worked to get housing navigation funding in the budget because counties identified back in 2021 that this was the #1 obstacle to their communities getting vouchers for youth. Since this funding being expanded for this purpose, and along with some important federal policy changes, we've seen a 54% increase just over 2 years in the number of vouchers in California. So we were headed on the right track. We don't want to see that reversed. Losing this state funding will reverse this progress. Based on history, we know that because counties are required to secure or offer these services, that if they don't have designated funding to do so, particularly counties that are more disadvantaged in terms of resources, will either request less vouchers or none at all. And that is based on what we saw happen before this program was expanded. And what does that mean for young people? They'll lose services, many of them, and those that need housing vouchers in the future, there will be way less. And like I said, more than 1,300 former foster youth had a FUP or an FYI voucher as of October 2023. Now, that grew from 870 vouchers in 2021. So we'd be going probably at least backwards in that direction and possibly even below that. So this is really important funding. And one thing we'll talk about later is it's quite likely the governor's office has no idea about this connection. So we want to help people understand this and make the case for why this is such a critical piece of state funding for young adults that are coming from foster care. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Amy, who's going to talk about the SILP housing supplement, and then she will pass it to Amanda, and then we'll have some discussion.
Well, I'm wondering, Simone, first, if we maybe could take questions by program, like just
Sure.
Since your information's just fresh, and if you back it up a slide, maybe we could just open it up for like a handful of questions. That way they get to ask their questions as they have them, because we are trying to make this a little more interactive. If you don't mind that switch up.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm just going to make it so I can see people's hands. If anyone has a question or a comment they want to make about the Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program, please raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can talk.
Well, I maybe while you're looking at that, I just want to say that I have heard, I do believe this, you know, we have a learning community and Andy's on the line. He's the point person for it. That even having this proposed to be reduced has a chilling effect for county child welfare agencies. You know, many of you on this are out there making the case for this voucher utilization. The counties have to know they have the resources to provide the services, and even this proposal is, it makes people more conservative and more cautious and less likely to draw on these. So that's just more of an observation. I had a call this morning that kind of communicated that to me, but looks like there's a question in the queue.
Yeah, Kathy Smith, you have your hand raised. I'm going to unmute you now.
I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just one quick question. Do you have this data broken down by county that you can share?
We do. We do. One of the follow-ups we can send in our email follow-up is a link to a report we did just a few months ago. Was it October maybe? And it has a breakdown by county of how many vouchers exist.
Okay.
Or how many vouchers are there.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else want to speak directly? And if not, we'll go to the questions box. Okay. I'm going to open up the questions box. Do we know why the governor targeted housing navigation and maintenance program for cuts? Not exactly. I don't know, Amy, if you want to share any insights you might have. I'll say we are looking into that. We've scheduled calls to get a better understanding as to why that was chosen in that department's budget for cuts. Amy, do you want to add anything there?
I don't think so. I think the reality is we need to have those conversations, and I think what Simone said, that, you know, this program is in the Department of Housing and Community Development, not Department of Social Services. And so whether the connection is clear that this HCD program is supporting foster youth may not be. And so I think that we're excited to have that conversation so that we can better understand if that understanding is there or not. We think it may not be, because historically foster care programs are in DSS. But we have that. They've been very responsive. They responded, HCD responded right away. You know, they've been great partners with this program. And so we're very hopeful there'll be a good conversation, and we will share that out with everyone, because we do know that that's going to be a question that when you have these conversations with elected officials and others, they will want to know that too. So we will definitely communicate that as soon as we have a clear picture.
Thanks, Amy. Someone said, if we're in a county that does not provide housing vouchers, suggestions for advocating for these to happen relative to proposed budget cuts. Well, I'm going to say that in a few months, my hope is that these budget cuts will be no more. And once we know that's the case, we can absolutely provide some tips on how to get housing vouchers in your county, and would love to have a conversation about that. I want to add also that if your county, we don't want to start rumors. If your county does not have any funding for services, let's say housing navigation funding didn't exist, it doesn't mean they can't get housing vouchers. They absolutely can. What the reality is many counties are reticent to partner on that without designated funding. But some counties, especially more resource counties, could identify private funding. They could pull, I don't want to say ILP, because I know people will go, it's so low already, we can't take from ILP, but any other flexible funding the county has, they could use for this purpose. The reality is that's not really happening in most counties. And so we are basing the future on the past. But there's a county is not precluded from partnering with a housing authority if housing navigation and maintenance program funding doesn't exist. I definitely want that to be clear. We don't want to prevent anyone from moving forward and getting housing vouchers for young people. And someone asked, how long has state funding for HNMP been in existence, and what's the average cost per person? So the program came, a slightly different format of the program was established in 2019. It was one-time funding. We worked to get it to be ongoing and altered it slightly so it could be used for housing voucher, youth with housing vouchers specifically. So it's been around since 2019, but it really has been, I would say, accessible for this purpose for, a year or two. So really over the most recent time period. The average cost per person, it really does range across counties because services range. But the way that, like for example, the Department of Social Services, when they had a pilot for the same purpose, they funded it at a ceiling of $1,000 per month per youth. So that's probably a ceiling. I would say up to, and it also, again, depends whether, it depends the depth of services they're providing, really across counties. We'll take one more question and then I think let's move on, and we can always come back to these later. Just for clarification, the state is cutting funding to the services, which prevents us getting the federal funding for HCV vouchers. It doesn't prevent anyone from getting it, but realistically, counties have provided feedback saying, if we don't have designated funding for mandated services, we are reticent to partner with housing authorities and request these vouchers. So it does not prevent it. I definitely don't want to send that message because, again, we don't want to stop counties and housing authorities from requesting these. So
But I want to just also be very careful in our language. This is a proposal. HNMP, there is no change in law, the money. So if you're that county, that question about from a county that wants vouchers, HNMP is there and it's there to be claimed and it's there to be used. And so I would say it's business as usual until the legislature and the administration collectively decide to, to turn back on their commitment to foster youth. There is no change. Again, what is released in January is a proposal that the governor has invited us into a conversation to talk about, but this program is not cut. It is not cut. It is, that is a proposal, and there's a lot to be done before that. So we should move on, keep talking about these, and then talk about what that process is going to be. So maybe we could.
Yes. So let's go to the next slide. And Amy, do you want to talk
Right.
about SILP?
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, I feel like we just finished talking about the SILP supplement because all of you on this call are what made it possible. We all know young people who live in a SILP, the rate is inadequate, which is one reason why about 1 in 5 young people in extended foster care are homeless while in foster care. Truly almost incomprehensible. And yet we know it's the case for a lot of different reasons, including an active state and county lawsuit saying we have to do better. And so the state did do better. The administration and the legislature joined together and said, yes, let's use a common sense approach by being able to increase affordability in a SILP. It's a very surgical and strategic approach that provides a supplement based on the cost of housing where the young person lives. Very practical. It's going to be more in Monterey. It's going to be less in Modoc. And so why is it important? Now, what's important is this was scheduled to take effect on July 1st, 2025. However, for the for the upcoming fiscal year, there was a small amount of money for automation because this rate change does need to be automated. It's not like you're going to calculate individual young people's supplement amount. So, so that's a little bit about it. And so why is losing it a problem? And that's the next slide. So, these are things you guys know. I mean, in some ways we're definitely, preaching to the choir, as they say, but we must have these facts and figures at our fingertips if we're going to be persuasive. The cost of housing has outpaced the growth in the SILP rate. Nothing has changed since this was adopted in the budget in July. And in fact, it's only gotten worse. And so we've seen how that is. It's outpaced at 41% versus 80%. And 60% of NMDs live in these very high cost counties, in those 50 highest cost counties. So youth who are living in SILPs are living below the poverty line. So $1,206 is $14,472. I'm not into like making anyone feel bad necessarily, but if any of us, knew of a parent of a young adult who just kind of like said, you're on your own with that, we probably wouldn't be very complimentary of that parent. We might say, we need to, make sure that young person has the resources for everything they need, because this money here is what they have for housing, for food, for utilities, for transportation, for all personal supplies. I'm very economical, but I couldn't even come close to covering those needs with that amount of money. And I think we all know this, that the legislature knows it, the administration knows it. These are very bright people. Many of them have transition age youth themselves. And so it's not a lack of caring truly. But we still nonetheless must remind and be clear about that point. These are young people not living in a family context. So usually for most foster care rates, the rate leverages an existing household. For young people in a SILP, you don't get to leverage that. They're really making it happen on their own. And this seems like kind of a fine point, but it's an important point. But last but not least, that SILP draws down federal funding. So again, I think if anything, California is very smart. It loves to leverage federal funding, and that is a smart approach. And so just like the HNMP and the FYI FUP, we're leveraging federal funding instead of going to use HAP or some general fund program. We're using a very smart approach to leverage that additional federal investment. And so, you know, these are some key points that we hope will be persuasive as we all go forth and make the case to maintain the commitment that the legislature and the administration have made. They made this policy choice for a reason, and we know that we can find different ways forward. So with that, why don't we pause and see if anyone, Simone, if anyone has questions, they can ask them live or put them in the chat or whatever way you'd like to handle it. Simone, I'll leave that facilitation to you.
Sure. While people raise their hands, I want to read something someone put in the chat. SILP is critical as a supplement, so cutting this would make conditions even more dire. It's also one of the few programs that go directly to young people instead of funneled through organizations for indirect services. That's very true. SILP is the only foster care placement where the youth receives the monthly payment directly. And just to be clear, this is not proposing to cut a SILP payment. That's a foster care payment. If youth are in a SILP, they will get a foster care payment, but it'll be that statewide flat rate of about $1,200. Without the supplement, it will not increase in each county based on the cost of housing. So, but that person is making a great point, and that this is the one placement, and 40% of NMDs are placed there where youth are living independently. They're receiving their money directly. We just want to equip them with more money so they can pay rent, right?
Well,
So
I'm going to address a question, kind of the same question that was asked about like where this is coming from. And we are going to be also having the similar conversation. DSS was very kind. You know, they soon after the budget came out, they conducted outreach. They invited a conversation about this. You know, they understand this. We believe, and we'll keep this conversation going, that there may be a perception that this affordability issue is going to be addressed in the new foster care rates. It's not our point of view that it will be. It's our point of view that that those rates are really about services, not about housing affordability. But we're thinking that that may be what is behind this confusion. And so it's going to take conversation. They're proposing the new rates. They're going to march those out. And there's just a difference between, you know, the supportive services that get layered on top of the basic rate and actual housing affordability for a young person who is living in a setting and not able to, someone's commenting foster care reform is about services, and this is really about housing affordability. So we're going to keep learning more, and again, taking them up on their offer to have that dialogue respectfully, and just kind of keep pressing forward.
well, there's no one with hands raised, at least that I'm seeing in the chat or in, oh, no, now there is. Jessica Fuentes, I am going to unmute you. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Jessica Fuentes. I'm with CYC as a part of the Bay Area Legislative Committee member. So basically, I myself am in a SILP. I'm just about to exit care. My case will be dismissed on the 27th or the 26th of January. And I will say that having a SILP definitely assisted me a lot. I know that the Bay Area has really expensive housing, so the SILP is the 1,206, like you guys said. And, you know, I would say it's kind of odd for them to want to keep it that way when everything else is increasing, gas prices, food is increasing, and housing is increasing. Now to live here, it's the lowest cost in a bad neighborhood is probably 2,300. The highest cost is like 4,000. So it makes no sense why they would want to keep it that way. I know it's not on you guys. You guys are just giving us the information, but I definitely would say that it needs to be taken very seriously because we already have a high increase in statistics of our youth being homeless. So I think that if we were to, you know, hopefully convince them to not make this happen, and so we can continue to allow our youth to become independent and live in safe homes that they can choose themselves where to live, I feel like that would be what's best. Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that everyone on the call agrees with you of the amount of hearts and hands clapping I'm seeing coming up over the screen. And we certainly do. Thanks for sharing that from your perspective as someone who is like in it right now, right? Why don't we take one more maybe question from the chat? Amy, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
All right. So someone wanted to know what the Fed match ratios are for each program. So maybe we can talk about SILP, and it is obviously different for housing navigation, which is not a foster care rate, but maybe we can focus on SILP at least first.
We could, but I don't know that exact answer.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well,
I can find it out. And in terms of what the 4E matching ratio is, we can certainly share that. Do you
okay,
know,
we can
Simone
share.
or Amanda?
Well, people tend to always say 50-50, but I know that it's not that simple. So maybe we'll get into the weeds of that at a later date, unless Amanda, you have an easy breakdown.
No, okay.
Okay, so we can follow up with that information. And I know that someone's asking about the number of people in SILPs, and it is 40% of youth that are NMDs are placed in SILPs. It's the single most it's the single most utilized placement for non-minor dependents, youth that are 18, 19, and 20. And Jenny's agreeing it is 50%. So let's just say 50%. I know there are some nuances there, but I think 50% is safe to say. And thank you, Jenny, for sharing the FMAP chart so people can get into the weeds on that for another webinar, another day. So why don't we now move on, and Amanda is going to talk about this third program. And again, the letter we sent around didn't cover this program, but we wanted to, and there's a separate letter for that you should sign on to, but we wanted to invite Children Now to collaborate with us on talking about these cuts, because these programs uniquely are 3 programs that are being proposed again for elimination in the budget, all of them. And everyone on this call, I think these are relevant programs for you. So Amanda, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself and talk about first?
Sure. And thanks, Simone and Amy, for having us and inviting us to be part of this conversation. Really appreciate it. And so really wanted to just kind of highlight this as another proposed, Amy, I like that you highlighted that, proposed, not done yet, cut to the Family Urgent Response System. And so this is a $30 million annual budget, largely administered by county child welfare agencies, where they provide, there's both a statewide hotline component as well as, and I think this is really important to understand, 58 county in-person mobile response teams. So every single county in the state has one of these in-person response teams that can go out and meet with any current or former foster youth up to the age of 21, as well as the caregivers of those youth. And it's defined really broadly who caregiver is, so this can really be supportive in a lot of unique ways. It's designed to be a really flexible program, and it's really designed to be driven by the needs of the children, youth, and caregivers. So it's really about meeting them where they are and being responsive to any situation of instability. So yes, it can respond to a crisis, but it can also be a support that provides early intervention, connection to ongoing supports. It's really nimble, and it's designed to be that way so that it can really meet the needs as they arise. So the goals of this program, it prevents placement instability. It's really designed to jump into whatever is going on and make sure that we can have whatever supports are needed to preserve that placement, to preserve the relationships, to help ensure that the additional trauma that can come from repeated removals and from police involvement in situations like this don't happen. and it provides a trauma-informed intervention that's really knowledgeable about the child welfare system. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir about the unique needs that children and youth have in the foster care system and the understanding of how the various systems that they interact work together. And so this is a team of folks that are really designed with that knowledge base to be able to jump in and support whenever needed. And it really is, again, designed to be responsive to the youth and families, to meet them where they are, to get them connected to the supports that they need within the community, and to be kind of that bridge to longer term support. And I really appreciate that we have both the phone number and the website here. So again, these things are still existing. They're still ongoing. We're going to keep them going until someone says otherwise. So it is available right now. If you know anyone who needs this kind of support, you can call, you can text, you can email, and they will be there to answer your call. And they will come out to meet you in person within an hour, within most cases, anywhere in the state. So it's a really unique service. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what we'll be losing if this program were to be eliminated. It's been a growing program. It has been taken up very quickly. It's been widely embraced by the community. We did focus groups with children, youth, and caregivers just at the end of last year, where they talked about how much they appreciated this resource, how much it made them feel heard. And it addresses some key needs that they elevated that led to the creation of this program in the first place. And so one of them is the placement instability and the challenges that come with that. Another one is about, again, needing this tailored support that other services and supports can't meet in quite the same way, to really understand their needs and to also provide this equity that's available, like I said, in every county across the state, regardless of other programs and supports. FERS can come in and be that kind of gap support to help alleviate any situations of instability. There's hundreds of stories out there about how they helped with ensuring access and success in school, about how they helped NMDs find housing. It really is a wide gamut of what FERS can do. And so we're really hopeful that we're going to bring this program and keep it going. We have over 5,000 calls each year, and that number continues to double year over year. So it's a really important program that we're working to preserve. And as Simone and Amy mentioned, there is a letter that we're pulling together, and we have my colleague Sarah Fung. She's the one organizing the coalition letter for us. So if you would like to jump onto that, you can email her, you can email me, and we're happy to get you connected. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so let's get some questions going. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Otherwise, we can, and thank you, Angie, for putting the letter in the chat.
Thanks.
Angie, do you maybe want to put Sarah's email just directly into the chat too to make it easy? We'll do it again later when we talk about how to act next, but maybe for now as well. And let's see if there are questions. I don't see written questions. Does anyone want to raise their hand and speak? And maybe while people are doing that, I just want to, I know we're a little jumping around a little bit today, but I know everyone's used to that. So I just want to shout one thing out. We're going to pause on FERS for 1 minute while you guys come up with questions. And I want to say something about CalWORKs cuts. Andrew Cheney, who is in the chat, put a message about, from Grace, put a message about being aligned with fighting back against these cuts. We are also aligned with and the Child Poverty Coalition and Grace in fighting back against CalWORKs cuts. And I want to say that while we aren't talking about those today, I'm going to put, and I hope, Andrew, I hope this is okay, I'm going to put your email in the chat. If you want information about those cuts to CalWORKs, which is broader, it's about child poverty more broadly, and an incredibly important program. If you want more information about that and how to get involved, I'm putting Andrew's email in the chat. So now I'm going to turn back to our attendees and see if anyone has hands raised. I am not seeing anyone. So why don't we move on for now? And there's always an opportunity to ask questions later or to make a comment if anything comes up and we're moving, too quickly for you. So why don't we next have a quick overview of the state budget process? Amy's going to cover that, and then we'll talk about how everyone can get involved or more involved than you already are.
have to unmute. Thank you, Simone. You know, now we know what's at stake, so what are we gonna do about it? And let's kind of move on to the next slide. So what you have in front of you are the California State Senate and the California State Assembly budget stakeholders. Let's start with the Senate. Once again, wonderful Senator Nancy Skinner is chairing the Senate Budget Committee. And then the HNMP program is in Budget Sub 4, which is called State Administration. It's not a very, it's a very general name, but that's where it lives. And then the SILP supplement and FERS are in Budget Sub 3. And the Sub 4 Budget Subcommittee is chaired by Senator Stephen Padilla. And the Sub 3 is Caroline Menjivar. And so we have the same thing on the State Assembly, different stakeholders, Assemblymember Jesse Gabrielle. I mean, these are just all-star people. These are stand-up people. Sub 5, Assemblymember Quirk Silva, and Sub 2, Assemblymember Corey Jackson. And so, these are people, each of these people can make a difference. I mean, they are our key stakeholders that we want to, they're people who, they weren't in these specific roles because committee chairs have changed, but every one of these people voted for certainly the SILP supplement. So they are on the record in support of it. And then several of them, except for maybe one, also voted for HNMP. And it's not that they didn't vote it, it's just that they're newer. And so these people have a stated commitment to foster youth, a stated commitment to these policies. But it's up to us to express our concern, to raise the interest, and ask them as members of the legislature to sustain their commitment, the commitment they've already made. And so one thing we want to do just while we're here is, if you see which areas they represent, and for elected officials, as you guys all know, it matters a lot. I mean, these are leaders, and so they have a bigger purview, and it also is interesting and helpful for them, for people who live in their district. So if you do live in one of these districts, San Diego, Imperial, Riverside, San Bernardino, Burbank, or San Fernando Valley, for Quirk Silva, Buena Park, Cypress, Fullerton, Stanton, La Palma, West Anaheim, and then Assemblymember Corey Jackson is like all of Riverside County. We really do want you to indicate that in the chat, or you can send it privately if you'd prefer. But we really want to bring people from these districts to district meetings to talk about these programs and the value that they have for young people. We'll do a lot in Sacramento, but it also matters a lot to these elected officials, what their community members, what their neighbors, what their constituents care about. And so we want to make sure to do that. So these subcommittee hearings and these committee hearings will happen throughout the next couple months. And why don't you turn to the next slide, Simone, and I'll kind of talk about that. So, essentially these are general. I mean, these aren't like this is the general process. Is the governor, started the ball rolling with the release of his proposed budget, and we got a perspective on that. And now we have subcommittees that will meet, full committees will meet. And then as we reach towards that July deadline, final negotiations will happen. The hard part is there are just a lot of subcommittee and committee hearings. So at least 2 meetings per subcommittee. And because HNMP and the SILP supplement and FERS are in 2 different subcommittees, that's at least 8 budget subcommittees. There'll certainly be at least 4 full budget committees and probably more. And so we also think that this year there will be less testimony allowed telephonically. So we've all gotten really used to doing that the last couple of years, but we know that there is a budget hearing on the 23rd, and both of the committees have stated that that testimony will be taken in person and not telephonically. That may change. It could be different based on the different committee chairs. but it does mean we're going to be kind of going back to that pre-pandemic approach to a certain extent. And so we're going to just need, I mean, we had over, a couple people have left, but for most of this call, we've had 118 people from across the state who are engaged on this. And if we really all work together, we can cover all of this work. We can cover these hearings. We can make sure that the message is spread, that these are valued programs. They voted for them. They adopted them for a reason. Nothing has changed. And we want them to sustain that commitment. And so really it's between now and mid-June where our full thrust is going to be on this. And in fact, at John Burton Advocates for Youth, we are so committed to this. On the housing and health side, we are not proposing another policy proposal. We are all in on this. It's inappropriate for us to try and move something forward when something that we've already done is so at risk. And so you can count on us to put everything we have behind this. And we're really just asking you to join with us in this so that we can achieve this together and kind of not unwind the clock for all the progress that we've made together, because we only did this by working together and achieving this together. So how are we going to do that? I want to hand it back to Simone, and she's going to kind of go through this, what exactly each of your organizations can do. How are we going to work together between now and June to make sure that we are successful?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, to put a fine point on it, this is our budget proposal this year. It is protecting these items. And people are already beating us to the punch in the chat, talking about testifying, op-eds. That's what we're about to talk about. So thank you, Andre and Jan and everyone who's throwing those ideas out. 100%, we're on the same page there. So take action. So here are a whole slew of things that we can all be doing and that we're starting to do. And we would love to plug anyone in who's interested in joining us, like Amy was just saying. So I'm just going to go over each of these, and then if there are some questions after, we can talk about it. I want to first say I'm getting ready to give you some information. There's going to be some links dropped in the chat. I know I'm one of those people where I'm like, there's 100 links, you're driving me crazy. We are going to make a web page on our website that has everything in one place. And we will send you that information next week. So don't feel like if you miss a link or you get confused that it's the end. It's not. We're going to follow up and give you that information. There's only really one super pressing thing that's happening like in the next couple of days that we want you to sort of make sure you have the link to. So let's start on the left. So most of you or all of you signed on to, at least for the SILP supplement and the Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program, signed on to the coalition or signed on to the letter. Thank you. If you haven't, or if there's other organizations that could sign on, please go ahead and send them the link to that sign on, and you'll drop that in the chat. Also for the FERS sign on, you email Sarah at Children Now, and you will also drop that information in the chat. It is a separate letter, so make sure you get on both of those. Testifying at budget hearings. So Amy just went over, there's several hearings that'll be occurring over the next few months. And the first one is January 23rd. There's a full budget hearing in the Assembly and a full budget hearing in the Senate in the morning and then in the afternoon. Those are in person. If anyone is free Tuesday and can attend, we'd love that. Type into the chat, even if it's a maybe, and we can follow up with you. So type into the chat, let us know if you can do that. If you can't, because I know many people can't just zoom up to Sacramento with a couple of days notice, we get that. You can still submit.
I just want to interrupt here, Simone. Like, I think we're being a little bit like, we really need some people to put their names in the chat that they're going to be there. J-Bay coincidentally just has a conflict that day. So, Kathy Van Osteren, our contract lobbyist, will be there, but we need at least 4 people standing with us on that day to say this matters. I don't mean to be like, you're a little low key about it, Simone. Like, if you're free, if you can cancel your plans, please do. Let's kick off this budget season right and show them that this matters. No one is going to do this for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And so please, I saw some people chatted, we'll reach out, but Kathy Van Osten will be there. She'll be at both meetings, but we need people to really stand with us. Thank you. Sounds like CWDA. Thank you, Diana. We really do need that. I mean, that's a big voice in the House. So, awesome. Sorry, Simone, I didn't mean to undercut you, but
That's okay.
you're a little bit, I think people really need to hear the real story.
So if you can do that, thank you. We appreciate it. If you cannot, there is an opportunity to provide written testimony. You can still get basically every organization counts as one, right? So having 10 people from one organization each write a letter, that counts as one. We don't need 10 letters from an organization. We need one written testimony per organization. We will provide you a template. You can pop your logo onto it, pop your name into it, just like we do with the support letters. And you can send that in to the committee. We will follow up directly with everyone and provide that very prescriptive information before this hearing so that you can send it in on Tuesday if you are not able to get up to Sacramento and attend this. And then for future hearings, we'll share information about those as they're scheduled with everyone. The third thing you can do is participate in legislative visits and or lobby days. These are, and a lobby day is more like a full day of legislative visits. The legislative visits are the individual visits. So kind of same difference there. But we'll be organizing some days, certainly trying to organize around probably certain hearings. And there happens to be a town hall, a virtual town hall that Assemblymember Corey Jackson is holding on the governor's proposed budget. And it is also on Tuesday, that magic day, of course, in the evening. It's from 4:30 to 6 p.m. It is virtual. So if you're able to call into that, which is we get a lighter lift, please do that, because being able to just make your voice heard and make a comment in that virtual town hall gets the message out that this is a priority. We care about this. And Assemblymember Jackson is an ally. He's not there to tear down these programs. And this is not part of his budget. So we want to keep him, standing with foster youth. He is like I said, he is an ally. So we want to attend that town hall and make our voice heard. Also, and I'll kind of allude to this later, but there's social media. You can do a lot of stuff on social media. So follow him and comment on that town hall now. In terms of other lobby days, we'll definitely be doing something on April 23rd, because that is, I believe, a day of a hearing that we're going to organize around, or a day of something we're organizing around in Sacramento. So obviously that's far off, but we'll get back to you on that. Just please hold the date. If traveling, because traveling can be expensive, if traveling is not possible for you or your organization just because of funding, like if that is the issue holding you back, we can probably help with that. So don't let that be the determinant of why you can or can't come up to Sacramento, particularly if you're, in Southern California. That's a flight. So please talk to us, because we might be able to help with those costs. And also, on a related note, you can do visits locally in your district. It doesn't have to be in Sacramento. Legislators are often in their district offices on, Fridays. So there's ways to do this even if you can't travel. All right. The next thing you can do, which you don't have to leave your house for, is make a phone call to your assembly member or your senator. And we say, do it now, do it before our next meeting. You ask them to maintain funding for these specific programs. There is a link that Angie will put in the chat as well, where you can if you don't know who your exact assembly member or senator is, you can find out who they are by going to that link. And we will send a call script, so you don't get on the phone and then have to figure out what to say. We'll give you literal, word for word if you want that, for what to say. Next, now this is sort of cuts across everything, but we wanted to put it specifically, call it out: recruit and train young people to participate. Legislators in particular, they want to hear from young people directly. They want to know about the impact of what it is that they are legislating. Like, they want to know what these programs do, who they reach, and what's going on the ground. So engaging young people in this advocacy is fantastic, but we all know it has to be done with care. We want to prepare young people adequately. We want to make sure that it's at their comfort level, and that they know how to use their experience and stories to advocate and not to just, we don't want them to just feel uncomfortable and feel like they have to bare their soul. It's how do you use it strategically? And so working with young people on how to do that is a really important advocacy activity that you can do. If you can bring young people to hearings, if they can attend lobby days, or visits, those are all really key things. Amy, did you want to say something? I thought you raised your hand or unmuted. No, okay. And then attend coalition meetings. So we are going today, like this Thursday from 2 to 3 was this call. We are every other Thursday, we are going to be holding this type of meeting. We might not have extensive slides for all those calls, but we are going to meet on Zoom every other Thursday with whoever can join. Please keep coming. This is the coalition, and we are going to talk about how we're doing. Are things progressing? Is there a hearing? Is there an opportunity? Is there an obstacle? What questions can we answer? So we will be meeting regularly, and you'll be receiving a calendar invite for those ongoing meetings that will probably continue for the next few months until we don't need them anymore. And the next meeting is February 1st. So you'll get a hold for that soon. Okay. Lastly, and I want to make sure I've mentioned everything before. Okay. So lastly, op-eds, engaging in media, social media. These are all really important ways to get the word out to sort of the general public and to the policymakers and key decision makers that are that we need to reach, right? So social media is probably the lowest barrier one. We probably all have social media. You can post content on your social media. We're going to populate a bunch of content into a social media toolkit. It'll be one of those things that we post on the webpage I mentioned. So you can do that. It's an easy way to sort of, copy paste, get it out there. You can and should follow the budget shares, all of the folks that Amy mentioned on that slide, which you'll get the slide deck today, and ask them to restore these cuts. This was in the governor's budget. The legislature has an opportunity to say, we don't agree with that. We do want these programs to stay. So we want to keep that message coming to the legislature and obviously to the governor that we want him to reverse what he's stated so far. Lastly, you can write op-eds. And I want to say something about op-eds. There is fortunately a group called the Good River Team, Good River Partners, that are hosting tomorrow an op-ed session on the SILP housing supplement specifically. Daniel Heimpel and Kevin Clark are going to host this session. They're basically going to help you craft and submit an op-ed. It's sort of an opportunity, it's a learning opportunity for anyone who wants to get more tuned up on that type of practice. They'll share key talking points and they'll help you craft and submit an op-ed that makes sense, like geographically for where you're located or where we need to apply some pressure. And they'll edit each and every op-ed and help them get placed. So this is a really good opportunity if that's something that you're interested in. And I think Andy I can't see the chat right now, but Andy either has or will put the information in the chat for how to register for that session tomorrow. I want to say one last thing, and then I'm going to move off this slide. Advocacy generally is a very broad range of activities. I think a lot of people think of advocacy and they think of someone like demonstrating with a sign or like being angry and like fighting for something. And that's one type of advocacy. But advocacy is change. It's change in the direction that we want to see. And that can look so very different. And it's really depends on what you're fighting for and who you're fighting with, or maybe you're not even fighting, you're negotiating, or you're sharing your thoughts. It can look very different. And what we found with this type of situation, like where the governor has proposed something that we don't like, shaming him is not, or embarrassing him, that's not how to get him to reverse this. It is pointing out why these programs are so important and helping him see that so that he can make a better decision, because he is a foster youth ally. He has made key investments in foster youth, and we believe that we can turn this around, that he will turn this around. And so when you're writing op-eds, and Daniel and Kevin will share this tomorrow, or when you're providing comment, developing materials, just keep that in mind. Advocacy does not have to be about being the loudest or the angriest in the room. It's being strategic and smart to get what you want and need for whomever or whatever you are working on behalf of. So I just want to not trying to be preachy, but I just want to say that because we want everyone to be effective in their advocacy. So now I will move on to the next slide and just, I don't think I have to go over this in depth, but I just want to say that we are very optimistic. Together, we can maintain these programs. We truly believe that. There's a lot working in our favor. Okay, I'm not going to go over each of these in detail. You can read them later, but there's a lot working in our favor, and we are optimistic that we will do this. I am going to stop because we are at very close to 3, and just take a couple last questions or comments. I'm going to go back to see if there's any hands raised. Amanda or Amy, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say as we're looking for questions here.
No, I just want to thank everyone for being on it, and also thank you again. This is the group that got these things in place. You know, this is just a different chapter of a story we have been telling. It's maybe a chapter we wish we didn't have to, revisit, but we did this together, and we'll maintain these programs together. I think that's the only way we will be successful, is really working together.
Thanks. Thanks everyone I see in the chat, there's so many people putting things in. Thank you so much. And Kevin Clark, can you comment? Someone wants to know will the session tomorrow be recorded? Can you maybe chat that in? Because I can't find your name to unmute you right now. And while Kevin does that, Andre, you asked if there are member associations we've reached out to. We are definitely in contact with California Alliance, and I believe they're on the call. But other alliances or other associations, that could be really helpful, because I don't think we've reached out to several others. There's a few others, but let's talk and see if we have a blind spot there, because we'd love to get the word out as far and wide as possible. So thanks for raising that. Okay, Kevin Clark said, yes, we will record. Okay, so I think we are at time. Again, thanks so much for joining. I hope you join us again on February 1st, and we will be in touch. And if you want help with travel, reach out to us, and our information is on the screen. You're welcome to reach out to me if you have travel questions or any other questions about the Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program or SILP Housing Supplement proposed elimination. And if you have questions about FERS proposed elimination, talk to Amanda at Children Now, and her information's on the screen there. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and thanks again for joining together for these important programs.